Look at a newly built housing estate before the rest of the world catches up to it. You have a handful of finished homes completely surrounded by vast, empty dirt lots. On the ground, the isolation is even more obvious. There are no driveways yet, no streetlights, and massive piles of excavated earth block your line of sight in almost every direction. The land itself is actively being carved out of nothing. You're living on a literal boundary line, completely cut off from any natural community. Just down the road from this specific property sits an abandoned farmhouse in an overgrown field. It's a stark reminder that this is an isolated, forgotten tract of land. We often think of new developments as safe, pristine environments, but moving in first actually places you in a geographic vacuum. You are entirely alone with zero witnesses. Curious tone. Imagine waking up one morning to a faint sound echoing across that empty estate. It's a violin. Haunting, distant, and playing right at dawn. The sound was coming from a fenced-in hill about 300 meters away from the house. It was council land, covered in signs telling people to stay out. Standing at the very top of that hill was a tall figure. They were playing the instrument while slowly rotating in a continuous circle, almost like a slow waltz. The homeowner dismissed it. He figured an eccentric neighbor was getting some early practice in. It's much easier to brush off the weirdness of the location than to consider what it really means. Distance creates a false sense of security. At 300 meters out, your brain easily rationalizes a predator's observation as a completely harmless anomaly. This vector map illustrates the radius of safety. Right now, there's a comfortable 300-meter buffer between the home and the outside world. Then, dozens of fresh footprints appeared in the dirt lots immediately surrounding the house. People were closing the gap. The perimeter shrinked to den a few nights later. Directly across the street, in a house that was entirely empty and unfinished, a single candle flickered in the window. Soon, heavy footsteps began pacing in the dirt right outside the bedroom wall in the early hours of the morning. The geographic buffer is gone. The radius snaps tight against the actual walls of the house. These events are calculated. Systematically dismantling a physical boundary is a tactic used by stalkers to test the perimeter, desensitizing the victim before initiating a direct confrontation. Late one night, the homeowner was gaming in the dark. The window beside his desk was completely uncovered. In an isolated house, you assume no one is out there looking in. He got up for a drink, turned around, and saw two faint lights hovering just above the backyard fence line. He walked closer, pressed his face to the glass. They were human eyes, wide open, staring directly back at him. Instantly, the violin started playing from the darkness, but this time it was loud, frantic, and screeching right against the exterior wall, like something demanding to get inside. The homeowner ran to the back door, but his massive Labrador, Jeb, was already there. The dog planted his feet, stared into the blackness, and let out a deep, booming bark. The stalker didn't sprint away in fear. The footsteps slowly backed off in a bizarre, rhythmic, circling pattern, echoing that same slow waltz as they faded into the distance. Glass and locked doors didn't stop the intruder that night. The only thing that repelled the breach was a primal display of apex territorial defense. The police response the next morning offered zero closure. Technically, the physical perimeter of the property was never breached. The footprints out in the dirt led to nowhere, and no actual laws were broken. Today, that estate is completely full. New families have moved in. Houses line the streets, and the physical vacuum of the neighborhood is entirely cured. But the homeowner still lives there, and he spent years obsessively searching classical archives and audio recordings, trying to identify the melody he heard those mornings. He never found it, which means the figure in the fog had composed an original piece of music written specifically for the purpose of hunting him. You can fix geographic isolation with new neighbors and paved roads, but knowing you were meticulously chosen by someone out in the dark leaves a vulnerability that never really goes away.